So, friends and foes, other miscellaneous Portlanders, I stand before you tonight with a dire message. Our cookies are not in good shape. Like many developers, I learned that a cookie is a little piece of data that's sent from a server, stored on your computer, sent back with future requests. Cookies have been part of the internet and of the web in particular all the way back since the 90s. They've been baked in at a very deep level. They're a fundamental building block between web servers and web browsers, and changing that would be a really big deal. And if anyone wanted to change something that deep, you'd probably hear about it, right? Well, this is you hearing about it. So we're going to cover briefly cookies. What are they? What were they? And maybe what's coming next. So just to recap, cookies are used for all kinds of things on the web. They're used for keeping you signed in on websites. They're used for hiding the annoying cookie banners. They're used for saving your preferred language or your font size or the fact that you prefer dark mode everywhere like I do. And also for other things like that, but things like tracking what websites you visit or what products you buy to try to target you for ads. And things that could have very serious privacy implications. For example, if a cookie is sent in plain text, then the CIA can root every router on the internet and see where you go, even if you're not signed in. This is an actual thing that happened. So how can we make a cookie? A lot of times it's hidden from us by frameworks or libraries, but it's actually pretty simple if you've done it. In JavaScript on a web page, you could just do document.cookie and set a key value pair. And from a server, we can add an HTTP header of set cookie with the same key value pair. For many developers, this is kind of as deep as it gets. And like I said, the rest of it is kind of abstracted from you by libraries, and you could call it a day. But in a lot of cases, we actually have more to it than that. And we want to make sure that the applications that we're doing aren't getting limited because we're setting cookies wrong. So what else do we have? Cookies, as they sort of currently exist on the web, are specified in RFC 6265, dating from 2011. And it defines kind of the syntax for setting cookies and the various attributes that you might have on them. You can set the domain that they're available on, what path from various other old days on the web, and also how long they're going to stick around for and under what circumstances they might be sent back. It also includes this sort of innocent-looking Section 5, which gives browsers quite a bit of leeway in terms of what they actually do with the cookies. It says a user agent, that's a web browser, could enforce more restrictions than those specified herein, for example, for the sake of improved security. However, experiments have shown that such strictness reduces the likelihood that a user agent will be able to interoperate with existing servers. In other words, if browsers try changing things, they're probably going to break things. So what did this specification leave out? It left out the notion of partiness, which we'll cover in a second. It was written before, and cookies were implemented before the notion of the single origin policy, which is what we might be more familiar with, especially as JavaScript developers or front-end developers. So they have a slightly different notion of what a domain or an origin means. They also have a lot of insecure defaults, which have kind of been shoehorned and monkey patched over the years to try to fix things, but the state of the web is still not great when it comes to cookies. Also, the size of cookies are too big. Remember, they're included in many requests that go back to the server. So if you start storing too much data in cookies, it'll needlessly increase the size of web requests and the volume of web traffic and make everything generally slower. So to this notion of partiness, you might hear the concept of a first-party cookie or a third-party cookie. And it's the same cookie, but it depends on where you are on the web. A third-party cookie might be on a separate domain, inside of an iframe from the containing page at the top. For an example, let's say you're on newswebsite.com, and when you go, it loads all kinds of other resources from different places, including this one at the bottom, sociallikes.com, which gives you a little iframe with a thumb button that you could click to like it in a social way. The cookies that are set by news.com would be considered first-party cookies while you're on that website. The cookies from sociallikes.com would be considered third-party cookies because they're coming from a different domain. And however, if I then later go and I want to see all the things that I've liked, so I navigate directly to sociallikes.com, you're going to have that same cookie, but now it's in a first-party context. Third-party context cookies are typically the ones that are considered to be tracking cookies in a lot of cases. They're things that can let other parties, sociallikes.com, know about your activity on the web. And the important thing is that in many cases, they know this information whether or not you want them to, or whether or not you're explicitly interacting with the thumbs up button on news.com. So what's been done about it? Well, a lot of things over the years. So briefly, some things have been privacy-enhancing browser extensions. For example, Privacy Badger, HTTPS Everywhere, uBlock Origin. These have been really great for experimentation, and many of these have been written kind of with a sophisticated user audience in mind and are very customizable and extensible, and you could have custom block lists and all kinds of things and make exceptions on a per-site basis. And in general, this is a good idea to use if you're someone who's concerned about your privacy and you just want more control over what's going on. The downside is they can be difficult to use, and the vast majority of people do not use them. So the other side of that is that browsers have begun to take a more heavy-handed approach in terms of blocking third-party cookies, and the number of specific technologies that have been used is increasing. So Safari has intelligent tracking protection. The Brave browser has their own whole set of heuristics that are kind of baked into their whole ethos. Firefox has been shipping content blocking, originally called enhanced tracking protection. And the Samsung Internet browser that comes default on their smartphones has a feature called Smart Anti-Tracking Technology. And all of these things do a number of things, and a lot of them are kind of like opaque as to what exactly they do under this like marketing label of it's machine learning. This can be good for users and can increase the overall kind of privacy posture of web browsers, but they're very difficult to understand as engineers because these features aren't standardized. And so it's difficult to understand what the implications of them might be for your application when you are developing different features on your website. For example, authentication, or other times when you don't want a user to have an experience of being signed out randomly, and other scenarios. So my opinion is that all of these things have really strong potential. They're already here. The web is changing. The cookies are changing, and they're probably not long for this web. And I think that's going to be a good thing. But the way that we move off of cookies and whatever comes next is going to have a big impact for all of us as developers, especially if we don't want one company's corporate agenda to kind of control the direction that that's going in. If we want users to maintain control, and if we want the web to continue operating in a standardized and interoperable way. So with the rest of my time, I'm going to give a little bit of a preview of a couple of things that are early proposals. None of these is implemented everywhere yet. Some of them are further along in the process than others. But I encourage you to see if anything looks interesting or if anything raises some flags, and then follow the development of these proposals on the web. So first, we have proposed the same site cookie attribute. This is a patch on top of existing cookies, just like the HTTP only or secure attributes that I flashed on screen but didn't go into earlier. This would let you add an attribute to determine what context your cookie is available in. For most cookies, if you just want someone to come to your website and be signed in on your website, what you're really saying is, I only want this cookie available in a first-party context. And if someone else's website happens to embed like an image from my website, I don't want them sending cookies along on that request. So that behavior is same site lacks. In some cases, you do explicitly want that third-party behavior. Maybe sociallikes.com actually is really useful to a lot of people. Or maybe you are making a new video hosting website and you want people to be able to embed your content into other websites. In that case, same site none would let you explicitly opt in to the behavior that we have today. The advantage of this is that because it's an explicit declarative attribute, it lets web browsers build user controls on top of this, rather than being heavy-handed and assuming that you want to block all third-party cookies, because most cookies are third-party cookies and the browser can't really make up its mind of like which ones are okay and which ones are bad. This lets web application developers be more explicit and declarative in their usage of cookies. This is one that was proposed by the Chrome team and is currently planning on being implemented in the next couple of months, probably. So keep your eyes on same site cookie attributes. The next one was a proposal from the Safari team. It's implemented in Safari. This is the storage access DOM API, and this one's specifically addressing the use case of embedded content, especially embedded video and embedded media. And what the approach that they take is, we're going to restrict everything by default, but if it's something that the user has indicated that they're interested in, for example, they clicked on an element leading to this request, then we're going to pop open a permission dialog. And if the user then approves that, then we'll allow access to storage in a first-party context on a third-party embedded iframe. In this case, what they mean by storage is everything. Cookies, local storage, session storage. Another one addresses the authentication use case. Cookies are bad because they can be used to uniquely track users and embed special codes. And at that point, you're looking at the number of bits of entropy. How much does it take to uniquely identify a user? Well, it turns out not very much. But if you're using a cookie only to be able to tell, is this user logged in or not? And then at that point, you could take a more invasive approach to maybe pop up a dialog or get a more explicit opt-in to users. If we had that one bit, it's not enough to track users, but it is enough to enable this use case for application developers. So this is a proposal where in a first-party context, you would call navigator.setLoggedIn, just with that Boolean value. And then when you're in a third-party context, you can read that Boolean value. And then if you are logged in, but you don't know which user it is, then you could go with maybe a permissions dialog or some other approach to kind of like upgrade that level of permission and access. This one has just been a proposal that has surfaced in on some GitHub issues and things like that. It's not standardized yet. Secure fetch metadata headers. This is a way to add same site-like capabilities to requests that you make from the fetch API. And then the last one, I think the last one, maybe second to last, HTTP state tokens. This is a wholesale replacement for cookies. This is what the future might look like. This has also been proposed by the Chrome team. In this, the value of the cookies comes from the browser. But all of the parameters in terms of how long they're good for and the ability to sign it with a certain key comes from the server. And all of the other options that allow you to shoot yourself in the foot are baked in by default. So you can only ever use HTTP state tokens over a secure channel, over SSL. And you can't add additional values. The contents of the token are not readable at all from other JavaScript. So it's just a token that's shared back and forth to the server. There's some more information in there in terms of the security model and how you would verify this and how you would build a server application around it. It is a little bit more complex than some of the other proposals, but I think it does a good job of thinking through some of the trade-offs and some of the ways that cookies kind of come up with some pitfalls on today's web. So I think this is one of the more interesting proposals that I'm paying close attention to. So the last takeaways, if you are currently maintaining a web application that uses cookies, and maybe you haven't thought about the way that you're using cookies in a while, I would go back and kind of read through everything that you're using. Make sure that you have the strictest settings that you can from the attributes that we have available today. Make sure that you have the expiration time as short as you can for your use case. And that you have secure and HTTP only set if you can. Also know what cookies are doing in your system. And if you have multiple concerns going on, say one is for analytics and the other is for knowing if someone is signed in, break those out if you can, because it might give you an easier upgrade path in the future when some of these other technologies start becoming adopted. And then the last is just be aware of this and pay attention to these proposals as they move through the standards process. And the standards process is for us, at least nominally, so make your voices heard. If there's something that you see that you don't like, go find the issue thread and comment on it. Thank you all for your time and attention.